So yeah, the Clippers are the most confusing team in the league, and I say this as someone who picked them to win the series in 6 games. We now have a 3 game series, of course. I thought this game was going to be super intense, and for what it's worth, the Jazz made it a little interesting in the last couple of minutes because they never really went away, but a decently comfortable win for the Clippers nonetheless. And the big thing was they brought out a bit more of a zone, which was sometimes a zone. Sometimes they would go into man-to-man. Sometimes it was double teaming the ball handler and not just Donovan Mitchell. Other times it was switching, and they definitely benefited on the Jazz missing some threes, especially Jordan Clarkson. I mean, overall, the Jazz still shot very well from three. And Mitchell missed a good chunk of his 2-pointers. He still got it back with free throws. Mitchell was great today. But still, the Clippers, they threw a bit of a different look at Utah. And just goes back to what I was saying at the end of game 3 or 2 or whatever, where I was just like, why does it always take nearly 3 or 4 games for the Clippers to finally look like an awesome team? And the same thing happened tonight. Very similar to the Mavericks series. For the Jazz's sake, I mean, you could just say, well, Jordan Clarkson didn't make some of his contested threes and the Clippers just roasted Derek Favors. I also think it was a matter of the Jazz, especially in the first half, were really uncomfortable with how to attack the Clippers. They could have had some more motion off the ball where, you get somebody to the middle of the floor and then the Clippers have to stick to that guy and then that guy can make a play. And I mean, the tallest guy they have who can do something is Bogdanovich. If you want somebody with a little more handle or passing, then it can be Clarkson or Ingles or Mitchell, whatever you want to do. But it seemed like their problem solving for that was mainly just try to get Mitchell downhill. And to be fair, it was a decent strategy because Mitchell was still great. It's just the flamethrower-esque offense that Utah has shown throughout these playoffs so far was not there tonight. And I think a lot of that was the Clippers' kind of Miami Heat-esque defense, which just seemed to be different, not just from possession to possession, but from 5 seconds into a possession to the last 10 seconds of a possession or whatever. One small part of that is I think the Clippers are realizing that Gobert is really not going to make them pay for doing all this stuff. I mean, if Gobert was somebody that they could throw it down to in the post or just someone that the Jazz really looked for like that, because he can finish, in the sense of like throwing him alley-oops or sometimes just throwing it down to him. Like there was a play late in the fourth where Gobert ended up with it and whoever ended up having to defend him, because they had to rotate over and they were small, they just kind of bounced off of him and he got a dunk, and that made it like an 11-point game, and then PG just had an ISO on the other end. But I feel like that can happen more. I mean, for this game, like, yeah, the Jazz shot 40% from 3, but they only shot 43% from the field, and just some more dunks would definitely help that sort of thing. Now, I finally get to this about 3 minutes in, Mike Conley. Conley is the guy who is going to notice Gobert when he's at the dunker spot and he can catch an alley-oop, or he will recognize that, yeah, Gobert's not a great post-up guy, but if he's got a certain angle on a guy who's smaller than him, he can still finish or dunk on the guy or whatever. Whereas, Mitchell and all these other guys, I mean, look, Mitchell's playing great, there's no doubt, so maybe I shouldn't even say him, but it's just different with these other dudes, they're not going to just be in the middle of the floor on the drive and then be like, oh, Gobert's got a shot right now. That's just not how they're wired, and that's fine. I mean, they've been playing this way all year, and they were the 1 seed, but they just really need Mike Conley right now. But even then, you could just say, well, if Clarkson goes 6 for 12 and 4 for 8 from 3 off of similar shots that he has been making in this series, and this game is totally different. I mean, it's the playoffs, and the margins are very small. As far as the Clippers' offense is concerned, I mean, really, I think they just took advantage of the problems they were causing the Jazz on the other end. The one big difference is that Marcus Morris made his threes in this one. The other thing, too, is I do think this Derek Favors thing is really starting to be a problem for the Jazz in this series. I mean, I know individual game plus minus, blah, blah. He was minus 14 in this game, and Gobert was a 0. So it was neutral when Gobert was in. It was horrible when Favors was in. And I do feel like that backs up the eye test, because there were still multiple possessions in this game, even amongst the Clippers doing a lot of good things for themselves. Kawhi gets into the paint, PG gets into the paint, Gobert's right there. They pick the ball up, they look around for a couple seconds, they pass it out. Even if still, Kawhi had a 3 where Gobert was switched on to him and stuff like that. But when Favors is in the game, all of those plays where Kawhi and PG are looking around, it does not happen at all. I mean, Kawhi had a layup over Favors early in this game. He had the dunk on Favors. I feel like there were a few plays where they got Favors kind of moving around a little bit. They could take advantage of that. And it's just a totally different game. And, I mean, Gobert just might have to play like 43 minutes in these last couple of games here, because I really do believe that if you play Favors 10 to 15 minutes, you may not be able to recover in all the other minutes, especially because the way that the Jazz are doing their rotations, Favors always ends up on the floor against Kawhi, it seems like. So we'll see about all that. So yeah, I think the big adjustment for the Jazz, besides hoping Mike Conley comes back, if the Clippers are going to use this zone again, is, besides just maybe playing Favors less because he just can't survive out there right now, is look for Gobert more, because he's going to get you more of those 60-70% looks, or he's just going to get fouled. So you're not relying on only jump shots or Donovan Mitchell being awesome. And probably just some more off-ball movement just to break up the zone a little bit and make the Clippers think about what they're doing a little bit more. I mean, especially in the first quarter and a bit into the second quarter, there were moments where there was no ball movement for the Jazz. And even without Mike Conley, they've still had a decent swing offense going on. And you could just tell that the zone defense was just really freaking them out for a few possessions. I think the other things to look at as we go back to Utah, number one, we're going back to Utah, so Clippers, when the Jazz go on some random 7-0 run in the third quarter, do you have the guts to not freak out when the crowd is going crazy? Number two is, will we see Kawhi kind of go next level again? Just because it seems like that's sort of the way he operates now. I mean, it happened in the Dallas series where Game 6 rolls around, he's like, all right, I got to go Superman. Will he have that mentality for Game 5? And will the Clippers be all in on either running him in action with Batum to have Gobert forced to defend Kawhi up top? Even so, Gobert has not done a horrible job when Kawhi has chosen to drive on him in those situations. Or will it be like hunting whoever Kawhi thinks can't guard him, which is maybe Jordan Clarkson or whoever it might be. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I just really hope in Game 5 the Clippers don't decide to go back to their sort of just float around and, I guess we'll do this on offense, as opposed to more of a specific plan of like Kawhi and PG go at this one guy every time. Which, to be fair, when Favors is in the game, it's him. So, yeah.